Hey guys, how's it going? STV here, title says it all, let's jump right into it. Write your own top 10 list down in the comment section below though, I'm excited to see your picks on this. Number 10. Dwight Howard. I'll start the list with a somewhat controversial pick. Look, it's no secret that I am one of the biggest, if not outright the biggest, Dwight Howard fan out there. During his heyday, he was an unmatched defensive presence. He was simply a highlights machine. I mean, his blocks that reached up to the 6th row of the stands were iconic for a reason. In the 2004 draft, the Orlando Magic selected Howard, making him the third and last high school player to be chosen with the first overall pick. From 2007 to 2013, throughout 451 games, he averaged 20 points, 13.7 rebounds, 2.5 blocks, and 1 steal per game, shooting 59% from the field. In his third season, being only 20 years old, he had the responsibilities of not only being the first offensive option, but the best defender on the team as well. In 2007, he led Orlando to the playoffs, where he averaged 15 points and 15 rebounds. 2 years later, the Magic built a great roster around him. They understood that if they wanted to optimize Dwight's potential, they had to surround him with shooters, and that's exactly what they did. Getting J.J. Redick, Hedo Turkoglu, Rashard Lewis, Jameer Nelson, and some other specialists. In 2009, Howard and the Magic finished with the third best record in the East, and in the playoffs, he beat the Celtics with Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and Rondo to reach the conference finals. He then absolutely dominated the LeBron James-led Cleveland Cavaliers, averaging 25 points and 13 rebounds, making 65% of his shots. When he reached the finals, he found himself matching up against the Lakers, and his team lost in 5 games, but he was basically the only thing that kept Orlando's defense respectable in the first place, so. The second half of his career has been disappointing. Many of us believe that if he had maintained the level of play that he showed in Orlando, on the Lakers, or even the Rockets, he would be much higher on this list. But still, even with all those ifs and buts that he has had throughout his career, he remains an 8-time All-Star, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, 5-time Rebounding Champion, and reached the finals as the best player on his team, something that very few superstars can say that they have done. Oh, I almost forgot. He's also an NBA World Champion and a future first ballot Hall of Famer. Number 9. Wes Unseld. The second and last rookie to win the Most Valuable Player award. The first to do so is further down this list. Write it down in the comment section below who you think that is. Wes Unseld was drafted in 1968 with the second pick by the Baltimore Bullets. They went from having a 36-46 record the previous season to winning 57 games and being the first seed in the East. He had 5 seasons in which he averaged at least 15.8 rebounds per game. Remember that he was only 6 feet 7 inches tall. In 1975, he had a defensive rating of 88 points allowed per 100 possessions. That's just surreal, completely out of this world. To give you guys some perspective, the player with the best defensive rating in 2019 was Hassan Whiteside, who allowed 99.1 points per 100 possessions. 11 more points than Unseld. Of course that they're playing in different eras, but it's still incredibly impressive. He won the championship in 1978, averaging 9 points, 12 rebounds, and 4 assists, thus taking the Finals MVP. After 13 years of playing professionally, he retired, averaging a double-double for his entire career. Number 8. Patrick Ewing. After 4 years of playing for Georgetown in the NCAA and winning a national championship, Ewing became a collegiate basketball legend and the obvious choice for the first overall pick of the 1985 draft. Ewing had a very polished game as a rookie. He was one of the best shooters the league had seen at the center position. Even then, he was a great defender, and over time he became an excellent rebounder. He doesn't have the most impressive list of accolades, but he was selected into an All-NBA team 7 times and played in 11 All-Star games. He was a consistent and resilient player. Before his injury in 1998, he had played in 76 games in a season 10 times. His best season without a doubt was 1990. He ended up averaging 28 points, 11 rebounds, 2 assists, and 4 blocks while playing each of the 82 games. In 1994, he led New York to its first finals appearance since 1973. The series went to 7 games, but in the end, Olajuwon and the Rockets were too overwhelming for the Knicks. People say sports teams are shaped by the soul of the city they play in, and that's why New York is so proud that a player like Ewing represents them. Number 7. Moses Malone. Malone is another one of my favorite players, without a doubt one of the most underrated in history. He began his professional career in the ABA in 1974 playing for the Utah Stars. He was no superstar in college, so a lot of teams passed on him, but he definitely made most of them regret having done so. As a rookie, he averaged 19 points and 14.5 rebounds, playing only 38 minutes per game. Then in the playoffs, he raised those numbers up to 22 points and 17.5 rebounds, being much more efficient shooting the ball. He was a great player for the first 2 years of his career, but it wasn't until he arrived in Houston that the NBA realized that Malone would leave his mark in the history books. In 1982, he averaged 31 points per game, and then in 83, he won a ring, taking the Finals MVP alongside it. But something way more spectacular than that was a feat that he accomplished during his early years with the Rockets. In 1979, Moses averaged 24.8 points and 17.6 rebounds. I cannot begin to describe how impressive this is, but I'll try. In NBA history, there have been only 6 seasons in which a player has averaged more than 6 offensive rebounds per night. 4 of those seasons have been achieved by the same player, Moses Malone. Now, no player, before or after him, has managed to average 7 offensive rebounds for a full season. Malone did it twice in a row, playing all 82 games of both seasons at age 24. Number 6. David Robinson. Also known as the Admiral, David Robinson played in the NBA from 1989 to 2003, winning 2 championships throughout his career. To say that Robinson was versatile doesn't come close to describing how amazing he really was. He was an offensive Swiss Army knife. He famously snatched the scoring title from Shaquille O'Neal in 1994. It was the last game of the season and Robinson was behind Shaq in points per game, so he decided to score 71, which ultimately put him ahead. In that same year, he averaged 4.8 assists, making him only the 6th center to reach that number. He led the league in defensive rating 4 times, in PER 3 times, in win shares per 48 minutes 5 times, in box plus minus 3 times, and in block percentage once. He averaged up to 4.5 blocks per game and averaged at least 3 in 8 different seasons. He is a 10-time All-Star, Defensive Player of the Year, 2-time champion, and MVP of the 1995 regular season. What I admire the most about Robinson are his humility and discipline. He sacrificed 2 years of his career to do his military service, and still had a career that we can all envy. Number 5. Bill Russell. The biggest winner in sports history, 11-time champion in 13 seasons played, Russell began playing for the Boston Celtics in 1956, and with the help of Sam Jones, Bob Cousy, Tom Hainson, and countless others, he would make it one of the most iconic franchises in history. Not better than the Lakers though. He never averaged less than 18 rebounds per game, never, at any point in his career, in any season. He was not the best scorer, he didn't have an incredible field goal percentage or, scored a lot of points, but his offensive game was not limited to that. He was an incredible distributor and passer, but the most important thing about his game was obviously his extraordinary defense. He led the league in defensive win shares in every season he played except for just 2. Leading the league in an advanced stat for 10 years in a row is no small feat. In the postseason, he never averaged less than 20 rebounds. The NBA didn't start counting blocks until 1973, so we can only imagine how many blocks he has. Simply put, Bill Russell refused to lose. There are many testimonies of how competitive he was, and well, I think the 11 rings he wears is proof of that. Number 4. Shaquille O'Neal. I'm sure many of you right now are angry at me that I put Shaq above Bill Russell. At the same time, I also know that many of you would just want me to go ahead and put Shaq at the top spot of the list. And that is an excellent way to summarize the kind of player O'Neal was. By his own admission, we know that he was a lazy player who, for the most of his career, was not in stellar condition. But as much as that bothered a lot of people, it didn't stop him from becoming the most dominant physical presence that the NBA has ever seen. I love advanced stats, but with Shaq, we don't really need to dwell deeper than the surface. By just watching his highlights, you understand everything you need to know about him.
He won the MVP award in 2000 by basically averaging 30 points, 14 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 blocks per game with an incredible shooting percentage, leading the Lakers to 67 wins and eventually the championship. All this while the second best player on the team was a 21-year-old Kobe Bryant who was inconsistent and hadn't become the Black Mamba yet. Kobe obviously was essential to win the championship, but he still wasn't the Kobe Bryant. He won 4 rings and reached the final 6 times. Even in 1995, when Orlando lost in just 4 games to the Rockets, I don't think anyone can say that it was his fault. He put up 28 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2.5 blocks at only 22 years of age. MJ didn't reach a finals until he was 27, and if Shaquille had been in his prime then, who knows, maybe he would have carried his team and won the series. That was the kind of talent he had. In the 2005 playoffs, he made 83% of the shots he attempted within 3 feet of the basket. If Shaq was in the post, the options to stop him were basically nil. In the playoffs, he always had a sublime offensive rating. What I mean by all this is that having Shaquille O'Neal on your team was pretty much cheating. Number 3. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Kareem, or as he was known at the time, Lew Alcindor, was drafted by the Milwaukee Bucks in 1969. The Bucks had only existed for a year when Abdul-Jabbar was drafted, and they didn't necessarily have the best lineup, but in 1970, the Cincinnati Royals made one of the worst trades ever and gifted Oscar Robertson to Milwaukee. And that is how in just their 3rd season of existence, the Milwaukee Bucks became NBA champions, with Kareem taking the Finals MVP, averaging 27 points and 18.5 rebounds. Kareem is arguably the best offensive player in league's history, winning the scoring title twice while having a field goal percentage above 57%. During the first 550 regular season games of his career, he averaged 30 points, 15 rebounds, and nearly 4 blocks per game. He is the most accomplished basketball player of all time. In high school, he led his team through a 71-game win streak. Later in college, he was a 3-time MVP of the NCAA tournament and was in 3 consecutive national championship teams. As a professional, he was a 6-time champion, 2-time Finals MVP, 6-time regular season MVP, 19 times selected to an All-Star game, 15 times selected to an All-NBA team, Rookie of the Year, Hall of Famer, etc., etc., etc. He led the league in 8 advanced statistics for 2 years in a row. One of his most impressive achievements is the fact that he is the oldest player to win Finals MVP, with a 14-year gap between the 2 times he was given the award. Kareem is obviously amazing, but there are still 2 players ahead of him that I believe were even better. Number 2. Wilt Chamberlain. The first rivalry in basketball history was that of Bill Russell against Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt was drafted in 1959 and immediately dominated all of his competition in a way that has not been seen in any other sport. At 25 years of age, he averaged 50.4 points and 25.7 rebounds per game during the 1962 season. As I said earlier, at that time blocks were not tracked, but fortunately for us, there were 112 games throughout Wilt's career where the exact box score was written down. He averaged 8.8 blocks during those games. Many of those took place when he was no longer in his prime, so with that we can estimate that in 1962 he probably put up 10 to 11 blocks per night. During his first 6 seasons, Wilt scored a total of 18,837 points. Tracy McGrady scored less than that in his entire career. We all know him as the guy who had a 100-point game, but fewer people know that he also has the record for most rebounds in a game, 55, and he did that playing against the Boston Celtics and Bill Russell. In 1972, he took the Finals MVP playing for the Lakers, averaging 19 points and 23 rebounds during a 5-game series while limiting the opposing team center to only 10 points, with a shooting percentage below 38%. And finally, in 1973, he had a jaw-dropping 72% field goal percentage. Now, many would consider it blasphemous to place Wilt above Kareem, and I understand where those people are coming from, so let's break this down. Defensively, Wilt was better, period. His blocks per game and Bill Russell himself say it. Distributing the basketball, Chamberlain is the only center in history to lead the league in assists per game. Scoring, Kareem never averaged more than 35 points per game, while Wilt did so in 5 different seasons. In 2 of them, he even averaged more than 44 points. When they met in the 1972 conference finals, Kareem had a hard time scoring against him. He put up a lot of points, but with a lousy shooting percentage. Wilt out-rebounded him throughout the series, and at this point he had been out of his prime for a long time, while Kareem had just objectively played the best regular season of his career. Many say that the NBA record book should simply be called Wilton Norman Chamberlain's biography. His stats are partly due to how different the NBA was back then, but I have no doubt that if he had been born 40 years later, we would still know him as one of the most dominant forces in the history of the sport. Number 1. Hakeem Olajuwon. In 1995, Shaquille O'Neal failed to win even just one game in the NBA Finals, and that's simply because a guy named Hakeem Olajuwon was on the other team. Chosen with the first pick of the 1984 draft, Hakeem became a star the moment he stepped on an NBA court. He looked comfortable, averaging 20 points and 12 rebounds per game as a rookie. He earned the 1994 MVP, but had arguably better seasons. One of them, 1990, when he averaged 24 points, 14 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and almost 5 blocks per game. He's the all-time leader in blocks and the only player to be, and probably who will ever be, in the all-time top 10 total steals and total blocks lists. He had a defensive rating below 100 points 13 times, which is unthinkable. He took the Finals MVP trophy twice. The second time he was with a mediocre Rockets team that had a regular season record of 47 wins and 35 losses, making them the first team outside of the top 5 seeds in the postseason to win a championship. Unlike most of the other players on this list, he made his free throws consistently and had a deadly mid-range shot. His post moves, his footwork, his agility, versatility, intelligence, his vast offensive arsenal, all of that and more made Olajuwon an athlete who was ahead of his time in 1,000 different ways. He basically had 2 quadruple doubles in the same month. Yes, quadruple doubles. His first official one was 18 points, 16 rebounds, 10 assists, and 11 blocks against the Milwaukee Bucks. In a decade dominated by big men, Robinson, Ewing, Mourning, Mutombo, O'Neal, Malone, Johnson, Barkley, Olajuwon got the best of each and every one of them over and over again. So if that doesn't automatically earn him the top spot on the list, I have no idea what does.